Perfect. Thank you so much.
Make sure I don't have anybody else that's trying to get in too. Right, and make sure I'm sharing the right screen. I feel like I had it all set up ready to go, but now I feel like I'm sharing the wrong button. Let me, there we go. Okay, you guys all see that? All right, well, then Tracy, I'm gonna start working through some of these and I'll let you kick it off.
Okay.
Oh, you're muted, Tracy.
Oh, I'm sorry. Good evening and thank you for having us. I'm Tracy with Arvada Fire Protection District. My information's here on the PowerPoint here. If you have any questions, you can contact me anytime on my email or contact our headquarters and they will track me down. And again, we have multiple guests here from the district. We have Michelle here with the CRR and Chief Parker with our Fire Marshal's office here. So Michelle, go ahead and take us to the next slide here. So tonight we're going to discuss urban interface, and a lot of people go, well, we don't live in the mountains. For some of us who lived in Arvada for a long time, a lot of our western suburbs, there was nothing out here. This was the prairies and nothing was out there at any time here. But over the last 25 years, we have started encroaching further and further to the west for housing. And so we look at this here, the definition of urban interfaces, the zones that transition between wildland and prairie into human development, which we just discussed here. And so the biggest thing we're looking for is, you know, a definition here. The next slide there, Michelle. And how do we incorporate our lives into the WUI, as we call it here? One of the programs that Arvada Fire has been using is the Ready, Set, Go program, which is being prepared for an incident if we do have something. Set is understanding the threats, such as it could be anything from tornadoes, it could be weather related, it could be a snow emergency, as the blizzard we had here 3-4 weeks ago here. And then ready to act, go. That means leave your residence if we have to evacuate. Next slide, please. And so what we have here is a basic response here. So for our wildland, we have 3 stations that actually incorporate that. Station 8, which is in your Westwood subdivision, 64th and Quaker. We have the station up by Ralston Valley on 80th and Alkire. Station 3 currently is being remodeled. If you've driven by 73rd and Kipling, you'll notice there's a big empty lot there. And we'll have that station in place here by the fall of this year here. But you look at the response capabilities. We are in the process right now. We have multiple members of our department who are trained in wildland. And we're actually starting our training here again here next month to make sure that all of our members, which is about 160 firefighters, will be trained in wildland response here. Next slide, please. So one thing that I'm a huge advocate is defensible space, and I have been working with Christina for a couple of years on this here. And so the definition of defensible space is getting rid of those materials that are behind your fence line. It could be materials that are behind your home. So we look at that issue here is kind of a magic number that we have, and this is set up by the government here under their studies, is 10 feet. And we look at 10 feet here. If we're giving that 10-foot dispensable space there, and you're going to see some slides here of how that works. But when we look at that, and it's just giving you a safety buffer, not to have any materials that might burn up to your fence. And if we have wooden fences behind there, those also could be added on to those where they can actually be potential ignition sources and extending out. So next slide, please. And here's a good description. This is actually behind my home here. I live in West Arvada, just like you folks here do also, but this is in the neighborhood up by 60 or actually 58th and Ward Road here. I'm just to the west here, but we have a large open space area behind my home here. And as you can see, the bottom slide there, my neighbors, we've been kind of keeping on it, but we make sure that we have, and you can see that's actually 20 feet, but we have that area back there that's cleared out, and that goes on the property line on both sides of this open space here. We want to make sure that we're keeping those clean here, because we did have a fire here 20 years ago that actually did quite a bit of damage to the wetlands that were back there, the grasses, and we actually had a few areas that we did lose some fence lines back here. But again, if we're making sure we're maintaining that. So as you can see here, cutting back those fuels, defensible space between 10 and 30 feet. Clearing ladder fields. And what do I mean by ladder fields here? If you look at that slide on the right there, look at those trees that are right there. But if we're maintaining those trees by keeping at least 6 feet of those trees trimmed off the grasses there, because what potentially can happen is if we do have a fire, such as you see the slide on the right, those grasses could actually extend into those trees where it actually starts to climb. And that's what we mean by ladder fields here. So we want to make sure that we're clearing those leaves, those needles, all that stuff is cleared away from that 10-foot defensible space line there. So next slide, please. And again, when we go back to defensible space here, also look at your gutters. You know, that's one thing that most of us probably do in the spring is clean our gutters from the fall leaves. Make sure that you're getting those needles out of there, those leaves out of there, especially when we have these pine trees, because typically those are the ones that seem to kind of clog those drains up there pretty good. But making sure we have those materials there, because these are considered amber threats here. And if we have those amber threats here, if we start getting those ambers that actually start to fly in the air, they can potentially land on your rooftops there. And if we have any of these sources, such as those pine needles there, they can actually cause a problem here. So we want to just make sure that we're clearing those out there. Next slide, please. So maintenance here, again, cleaning your property line. Next slide, Michelle. So the Ready, Set, Go program is being set. So what does that mean? Situation awareness. So for our residents here, we just want to make sure that if you do see something that possibly could be smoke, and we do get a lot of calls for people with barbecuers and the smokers, but you know, that's just something that we want to make sure that it's something that's not being an issue here if we do have a small fire. Because if you guys had saw the press conference today we have with Governor Polis here, we're already predicting drought conditions here probably till July here. And they're already looking at these here, and we're looking at possibly another severe summer of wildfires here again. And so when we look at that, we want to make sure our residents are being prepared for that there. So again, if you see something that doesn't look right, give us a call. We'll come out and investigate. Okay. And responsibility here, we're looking at the ability of everybody making sure that we're taking care of our properties. And we'll kind of discuss that a little further here. Next slide, Michelle. So if we do have to evacuate, there's some issues here that we want to make sure that we're taking things with us here. This is the 6 P's of evacuation. And again, this is part of the Ready, Set, Go program. Have a plan. You know, what do you need to have? And it could be anything from our prescriptions. A lot of us don't think about that, but if we're taking prescriptions for, say, diabetes, we want to make sure we're taking our metformin or our insulins with us. If you're on blood pressure medications, making sure we're taking that stuff with us here. Pets, all of us have pets here. Again, making sure we're gathering food for them. If they're on medication, taking that also. Having all that information ready to go. Paper documentation, which is your, it could be anything from maybe you have a living will, maybe those type of things that you want to put there, have copies of those ready to go. Pictures, again, a lot of us have children. Michelle's got a little beautiful little baby girl that we see pictures of all the time at work here, but I want to make sure that we're taking those pictures with us there, especially things that are very important to us here. And then your credit cards, cash, those type of things here, those things ready to take and ready to go if we do have to evacuate our homes. So those are our 6 P's that we recommend that you have that. At your clubhouse, we have these bags available to you, the Ready, Set, Go bags here, and we have those available too. I was just out there the other day. They were still on the shelf there. So next time you're able to make it in there, if not, contact Christina there. They can get these to you here. And if we need more, we'll get those out to you folks there. Okay. So again, what can you do? Remain alert, keep informed. And we have a program in place here, and that program is the Code Red, along with the Arvada Police Department and Arvada Fire and Jefferson County Sheriff's Department. We have a program that's available to our citizens here. And so what does that do? You register your cell phone, because a lot of folks don't have their landlines anymore. A lot of us have gotten rid of those. There is a very small percentage of residents that do have that. But if we do have the Code Red there, you're able to register it. It takes about 2 minutes to do. You get your phone registered. So if we do have an actual emergency, may it be, again, weather related, anything having to do with possibly a fire there, we want to alert our residents know that, hey, this is what's going on here. This is the communication we want you to evacuate. We want you to follow the directions of our police officers. They're going to tell you which way we want to get you out of, so you're not going to be in harm's way there. Okay, and then making sure that you have your ready, set, go bag ready to go, and you're cooperating with us here, because if we do have a fire, we might have only have a few minutes to let you know that we need to evacuate, and again, not re-entering those that zone there, because again, that's interfering with our police officers and also our firefighters as we're trying to do our job to make sure that we don't have a loss of life and making sure that our people are safe. And if we have to go back and rescue folks who aren't not don't want to evacuate there, we're actually going to cause some issues for us trying to get people out there. So next slide there. So what you see here is a map. This map was taken last fall, and this is from the National Fire Administration here. And what that map was, that was taken right, I believe, the week of the Spring Mesa fire there. And so we look at that map here. The red is actually on the western side of the city on Highway 93. And then we look at the yellow to bright orange here. That's actually on the east side. And again, that was a high potential for fire. And they were already looking at that time. Next slide, please. Did we lose Michelle? There we go. So last fall, we had a fire at the Spring Mesa subdivision, which is just south of you folks here. Next slide. So we look at some of the information on this here. That Spring Mesa fire here, the call came in at 3:42 p.m. Fire units were dispatched at 3:44. And we looked at the weather, and that's one thing as a firefighter, especially wildland firefighters, we're always looking at the weather every day. And we do that on our pass offs every morning. We pass the weather on, so we're preparing for if we do have a red flag warning. And so unfortunately that morning there was a red flag warning that was issued here. Our weather was 50 degrees. It was a beautiful fall afternoon. I remember we were watching the Bronco game when this happened there. Sustained winds at 40 miles an hour, and we had gusts up to 60 to 75 miles an hour. And that was from NCAR, from the National Weather Service. Those were issued there. Unfortunately, we lost 40 acres of burnt grasses and fuels that were on that open space out there. No loss of structures or life. Mutual aid response, we had multiple agencies from our surrounding fire districts and the cities that helped us out there. Again, code red was issued. We had assistance from Arvada PD and the Jefferson County Sheriff's Department. They were able to assist us with evacuation orders, getting people out of the area. Next slide, please. So we look at an aerial view here, and this is courtesy of Chief Parker here, but we look at the fuels here, what happened that day. You can see the wind kind of took that fire there. What happens if that would have went left? It would have went into the Pat Ridge Park open space there, and we've all hiked through there, and we have a lot of grasses through there. But then we also have the potential, again, of that fire changing direction into the northern portion of that subdivision there. And you can see the grasses were pretty short, and that was kind of a godsend for us there, because it kind of creeped along there. But again, when we have wind-driven fires, those tend to change directions multiple times on us there. Next slide. This is another aerial view here, and this was the fire path, as you can see on the left there. And the slide on the right there is where we had our apparatuses there. We had multiple fire apparatus doing structural protection for the area that we were concerned about there, and these were to protect those homes there. Next slide. So we look at mitigation, as it says, it's crucial here. These pictures were taken the day after the fire, and you look at the properties here, especially the one on the right there. I want you guys to look, as we discussed here, I said, if you're able to keep those grasses nice and short here, you can see that fire just kind of creeped along, and then it kind of put itself out there. It burned, and it was very short grasses there. And you can see all the way up that fence line, all the way to the north there, those grasses are very short there. But then we look at the photo on the left there. This particular property had no mitigation done on it there, and those grasses were extremely long here. I was out there early in the summer, and those grasses were pushing pretty close to about 4 feet tall. And, you know, when they cure, which means drying out there, we have a potential there. And unfortunately, the resident of that home there lost about 100 feet of their fencing there. To my residents that were on the north side of that there, they did a great job, and kudos to them. They did a great job. That's all I can say. I was extremely happy. Next slide there. So again, everybody can make a difference here, and that's what we're asking your help as residents there, to make sure that you are mitigating behind your property, especially if you have open space behind your house there. You know, I talked to some of the neighbors out there. You know, we can go out and buy yourself a cheap lawnmower, split it with your neighbors 5, 6 different ways there. take that out there, cut that once a month to every 6 weeks there, and you're going to keep those grasses nice and short, and we're not going to have any issues here. But we have our zones here. And zone 1 there, as you see on the slide on the right there, is the areas that are 1 to 5 feet from your house, your actual residence there. We want to make sure we're keeping everything nice and clean there, keeping the weeds, keeping them under control there, keeping any products, as we talked about, the pine needles, those type of things, are getting those cleaned up there. Zone 2 is the buffer zone that we go from the house out, and we're looking at about 30 to 50 feet out in that direction there. But again, we want to maintain those properties there. Next slide there. So again, this is one thing that we're asking for your help, and this is going to be a collaborative effort between the fire department, the HOA, and the neighborhood residents there, of keeping your properties nice and clean there. And I think that if we do that, we can keep our fires very, very low there. So, and again, as you see there, we can make a difference together there. Okay, that picture there was from a fire that was last year up in the mountains here. And I thought it was one of the cool pictures that I saw all season here. You can see those are those ambers there. And if you remember, those ambers, they actually flew in from 40 miles out to Fort Collins there. And that's why we had our little spot fires here and there. But again, okay. Next slide there. Any questions?
So before we open it up and look at Michelle's daughter, how sweet. So
yeah, sorry guys, she had a little throw up accident, so that's why I was a little late on that one slide.
Well, so yeah, we do absolutely want to open it up to questions. I do want to make note, though, for those on the call, that Michelle has included in the chat a copy of the Code Red instructions, the flyer that they have to get you as residents connected with their Code Red program, so that you're signed up and are getting those, alerts, etc. So you can go and look in the chat and download it from there. And we can open it up to questions right off the bat. And then I do have some questions that we've collected that I can share once our live questions are taken care of. So we can open it up now.
Christine, I did want to mention quickly too that we have an event that's coming up on May 1st and 2nd that we wanted to make sure that everybody knew about. So what we're going to be doing is having large roll-off dumpsters at our training center to help with all of the material that you guys are going to be creating from your mitigation efforts. So it'll be open and available for people to drop off those, of course, organic materials only. And we're going to be doing that from 10 to 3 on May 1st and May 2nd. So it's available until it's full. We're going to have some help. Charlie and Susan, I'm going to be reaching out to you soon about this. But we're going to have some people on site as well to make sure that there's some organic material is only being put in there. But wanted to let you guys know, and we'll be sending out a flyer soon with that information as well.
So we'll be sure to incorporate that information and that flyer for all you residents in one of our upcoming newsletters as well. So any questions? Let's open it up. It looks like perhaps Chris has unmuted himself. And by the way, you can also raise your hand, use the raise a hand feature as well, but we'll notice you if you're unmuted. So Chris, did you have a question?
I did. And just first of all, thank you to Arvada Fire for putting this together. This is a great resource. I am not surprised, but it is concerning that, we only have 18 participants, and of the 18, I'm guessing 8 are either city or metro district folks, so maybe 10 residents. And I think that that's going to be the challenge going forward, is getting this information out to the public. Christina, what do we have? 1,500 homes, nearly 1,500 homes in Leyden Rock.
Yep, that's correct.
I'm not great at math, but I don't know what percentage of residents are attending this meeting, but that's not very good. So that's one of my concerns, and that's what I've offered to help with. Hopefully, this is the beginning of a campaign that we can all, with getting with our neighbors and things like that, because I think the tendency is for our neighbors, human nature is to not worry about this kind of stuff until there's an event, which obviously is not going to be great for us. So anyway, that's just, I guess that was more of a statement than a question. But as far as a question goes, Code Red, I know that Michelle was going to look into finding out how many folks have actually registered for Code Red, but I'm curious of the folks that I can see here that are actual residents. If you guys put your hands up, who's registered with Code Red? Does anybody know what Code Red is? Okay, so less than half. So that, and again, that was my suspicion as well, as I think a lot of people just don't know what Code Red is. So I would just echo what was stated here. Look into that, use the link in the chat, or just go into your app store and search for Code Red, because I think that's the key is going to be getting a hold of residents if something happens, I think. So to my question, sorry, I don't mean to monopolize everything, but you mentioned the grasses. I live right along the berm, which was the Jefferson Parkway, which someday still may be the Jefferson Parkway. Obviously, that's not my property. It's not my land behind my house, but it does butt up to my fence. So I guess this would be to you, Christina, or to Brett. Given that defensible space could be critical should a fire event happen, first of all, do we have permission as residents to cut down the grasses behind our homes, or is that something the Metro District might consider adding to the budget for landscaping to keep those grasses behind the homes mowed down?
So Chris, we actually already have a plan in place and have this will be our third summer in which we have done that defensible space behind all district fence lines that back to open space.
Okay.
So we actually do have that in place, and we've already budgeted for that. It's within our contract with our landscape team. In
Great.
fact, the landscapers are going to be going out within the next 2 to 3 weeks to begin the process of that. In fact, what they're going to be doing is first removing all large debris, rocks. That way their tractors can get in and get done with more efficiency. So we've already set up that process and do already have that timeline. And we're hopeful and looking forward to having all of those fence lines completed before July 4th. So that's our goal.
Great. All right. Thank you.
Any other resident questions?
I have a quick question. One, I want to thank Chris Woodley for driving this entire event. I know Christina has done these in the past, but when Chris noticed the Spring Mesa fire, he really started sending out some emails, getting some people involved in setting this up. So Chris, thank you very much for, again, doing everything that you do for this community.
Happy to do it. Thank you.
Tracy, quick question for you. We are currently exploring a project where we are going to be restaining the fences along the perimeter of the neighborhood. I understand maintaining a defensible space is going to be much more important than what I'm going to ask about, but are there stains available that are more fire retardant than others, or is that a component we should be considering as we're looking into this fence restaining project? And you're on mute.
Okay, here we go.
Yep.
Brett, I'm gonna refer to Chief Parker. He's our fire marshal, and he has all the insight on flammable and non-flammable stuff there, so he can probably help us out there.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I don't know if there's anything that would be any more or less fire retardant. Most of the paints that you're using, if it's a paint, not a stain, a water base is obviously a little bit better, but I don't think that's going to be much of a concern if you have that defensible space to where the fire wouldn't even get to that spot. But I can look into some stuff and get some information for you guys.
And Christina, maybe that's something we should just ask about when we're talking with the vendors, if that's going to, I don't know if that would make a material difference or not, but something to think about.
Absolutely.
One other point I wanted to touch on before I go is Chris pointed out the light attendance we have here, which unfortunately tends to plague a lot of our Metro District meetings. Christina is recording this and it's going to go on the community YouTube channel. And I also see this as part of a regular education series for the residents here in the community. Just like the presentations that we've received from Arvada PD, it's just going to be part of our regular education program that we're going to roll out here probably on an annual basis. So I hope you like seeing us. Hope you like seeing this here, Tracy, because we're going to see more of you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, I do want to thank Tracy because he has been ever present and an excellent communicator with me personally at the district office. And Tracy is just very clearly concerned with our residents being safe and continually providing this good communication. So I do want to reiterate to the residents that are on the call that we do have those Ready, Set, Go bags at the clubhouse. And so you're welcome to drop by and obviously pick those up and get those ready for your preparedness plans. So before I start with some of the, we received a number of resident questions prior to the meeting. And so before I get into those and ask you guys those questions, I'm curious as if there's any other resident questions here that are on the line. I see Mark. I think you might be muted though. No, I'm not hearing you, Mark. If you have a question, Mark, I'm not sure if you're muted or unmuted, but we're definitely not hearing you. I would go ahead and put it in the chat box and then I'll keep tabs on it and I'll make sure to get it answered for you, okay? Good deal. Okay, so I have at least 4 questions here that I'm going to pose. And of course, you know, any one of you, Tracy, whether it be you or Michelle or Stephen or even Commander Nazarick, if you want to, you know, feel free, just jump on in, unmute yourself and feel free to go ahead and answer the questions. First one that we got actually was asked by a number of residents. And so I think this is a good one to start out with. This one is basically, what do we need to do in the event of emergency? And should we be considering an additional exit road from the community? Essentially, I think there is concern that there is a lack of a secondary exit to the north of the community. You know, that northeast corridor. And so what maybe is the city considering or perhaps has considering, you know, just to help with traffic flow in the event of an emergency in that situation?
Well, I can't speak for the city of Arvada, but I do know we've had some meetings regarding, you know, the viability or the need for an egress route outside of the community to the north. That really, the evaluation really falls into the traffic folks and the engineering division at the city to truly look at that. But from a fire code perspective, there's adequate number of ingress and egress points from the community. So we base it off of the number of homes, and when you exceed a certain number of homes, it requires different numbers of ingress routes for us to get in, not necessarily egress routes for people leaving. But as far as the fire code is concerned, everything is up to code because we have multiple access points. And many people might have noticed, and maybe not, on the east end of Leyden Ranch, there's that emergency access point right along 82nd. And that had to be installed because there was only one access point into the Leyden Ranch community. So that one was installed so that if we needed to get our apparatus in a different way, if the primary access route was taken away for whatever reason. But from a fire code perspective, it is not needed to the north.
Okay. Any response or questions based on that information?
Yeah, I respectfully disagree. And Tracy, you and I have talked about this a little bit. I understand that there are exits out of the community. However, they all feed on to 82nd Avenue. And as we know, and as we've seen, 82nd Avenue becomes absolute gridlock whenever there's an issue on 93 and traffic is forced down 82nd. So whenever it fills up, it becomes very difficult to get out of this community. I appreciate it, understand what you're saying, but I am going to continue to work with the city to try and find a way that we can get an egress out of here to the north. I appreciate that, though. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's why I mentioned it's going to be the city of Arvada that has the ability to do that. From the fire department's standpoint, I have no function to require something, but they're much more versed in the actual traffic flow and amount of people going through there.
Gotcha. Understand. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Stephen. Shifting gears a little bit, here's a question from Virginia Anzalone here in the community. And she says that she has a fire extinguisher in her kitchen, but she thinks it's at least 4 years old, but she doesn't know the exact date. She's kind of wondering if there is a typical lifespan on extinguishers. And then also, can they be refilled? And if they can be refilled, where is that done? Where can you get that done?
I'll go ahead and take that one too. There's really not a definitive end of life for a fire extinguisher. There are certain requirements. It's typically, once it reaches 6 years old, they have to be hydrostatically tested, which means they have to take the top off and pressurize it to make sure that it still can maintain the pressure as it's sitting there with the extinguishing agent in it. They can be recharged, but typically for the type that you'd see in a single family home, it's going to be cheaper to dispose of your fire extinguisher and just buy a new one. It'll be much more expensive to pay a company to refill it.
Gotcha. Okay, very good. Any other questions on fire extinguishers before we move on?
Hi, sorry, me again. How do we dispose of a old fire extinguisher, because they are still going to be somewhat pressurized?
Yeah, so what we recommend for everybody to do is discharge it into like a trash bag, and then make sure all the pressure's out, and then you can dispose of it.
Thank you.
That's good to know. Okay, so this next question comes from resident Rick Johnson, and he says, living alone, I'm wondering if there's a program to allow access to basically, for emergency situations, essentially like into his home, since he's all by himself. So is there somebody within the fire department that he could provide like code access to his front door in case they, the fire department needs to come in and help him? Or what do you suggest, any of you guys from the fire department, I guess, on this line of thought or questioning for those that are alone and may need particularly extra assistance in event of emergencies?
I'll take this one. So we do have, there was a lockbox program that was originally run through PD, and then, and Commander Nazarek might know some about this too, but we're working with PD currently on a lockbox program so that they can get those. It's almost like those real estate boxes is what they were doing, that you see on when people are selling their home, there's those real estate boxes that have the key. So now though, we're looking at having the boxes that are like on the outside of our businesses that we use to access homes. So it's a common key that we all have in our apparatus so that we can access those homes. So we're currently working on a grant to get some of those, they're called Knox boxes, available for residents, as well as so that we can continue a program like that. So they're more than welcome to call us. Amber Jones is the one who's kind of helping lead that. So they can reach out to us and we can connect them to Amber, and she can help them in the meantime. And then we can look forward to hopefully receiving that grant.
Yeah. Good. Okay. That's good information.
You can also do Smart 911. Sorry, Smart 911 is also a good resource for people to put in any of the information that they want dispatchers to be able to pass along to emergency responders. So there's two kind of things, right? There's code red, which notifies you of emergencies in your area, weather related, fires, if there's a lockdown in your area and they want you to be safe and stay indoors. And then there's also Smart 911, where you can put information about what you might have that could be interesting in your home, like maybe you have pets or you have a little one, or information that you think is vital for first responders to know if they respond to your home. So that's another place that people can kind of pre-register in case of an emergency.
Okay. Very good. Yeah, and I'm definitely glad that we are recording our presentation tonight, because that way we can definitely have this information for all those that aren't on the call. So that's excellent. Mark Little, who is on the call, he did put his question in the chat, and essentially he's wondering, he actually thinks he's got trees that are behind his fence, closer than probably 20 feet to his home or his fence line. And his question is basically, is it okay that they're that close? Should they be that close? What do those from the fire protection district say on that?
Sorry, they said there was trees 20 fence to his property or behind the fence line?
Behind the fence line.
Okay, I think he's fine back there. He can keep an eye on him there. If it's just common property there, it depends. If it's part of the district's land, they can probably keep an eye on that. But if it's something that probably has to be mitigated, maybe trimmed up, they should probably contact you.
Right. So basically we could just ensure, like what you were talking about in your presentation, Tracy, was ensuring that the bottom levels of those trees are trimmed up so that it makes it less easy for that fire to rise up that tree.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, here is yet another question from a resident that was received previously. This one is from Greg Proul, and he says, he asks, is there a standard response time for fire ambulance to respond to a 911 call? He says, we live near the power plant on the west side of Leyden Rock and noticed that there is not a direct route into the neighborhood from the proposed new Candelas fire station. And he actually included a map with his question showing, the approximate distance from the new station to where he is at. So he was just curious if there's a way that the fire department can evaluate if there's a need or a benefit, again, to connect perhaps Leyden Rock, Leyden Ranch to Candelas to improve those response times.
I can take that one. So one piece of information that I want everybody to be aware of, through our accreditation process, there's quite a few documents that we have on our website. One of them, namely, being our community risk assessment and standard of cover. And it, in depth, over 130 pages, covers our response times, how we respond, how we analyze everything in this question. But I pulled up some information specific to response times, and within our jurisdiction, we have urban areas, the areas down in Old Town, we consider that to be an urban area. Then as you move further west, it gets to a suburban, and out in Leyden and Candelas, it's technically, per our accreditation documents, considered rural. So we have two different metrics for our responses, one for urban and one for rural. So, and it's broken into fire suppression, technical rescue, hazardous materials, medical responses. So I pulled up two that is most on people's mind is a response to a fire and a response to a medical emergency. And we evaluate this. We want to meet our goals at least 90% of the time. We don't do average response times. So it's in let's see, for a fire suppression response, our goal for the rural areas, we haven't been able to establish anything because there's been so few calls out there. We haven't been able to analyze our responses statistically because we just haven't had enough sample size there. But our benchmark is to be 9 minutes and nope, sorry, I was looking at the wrong one. Our benchmark is 13 minutes and 20 seconds. And that is to get an entire, what we call an effective response force. And it's not just the first unit on scene. It's for a fire, 4 engines, a truck, 2 ambulances, a battalion chief. So it's a large response, and that's the last person on scene we want there in 13 minutes and 20 seconds. We want to try and get our first unit on scene in 9 minutes and 20 seconds. Now, when we look at medical responses, it's slightly different because we send fewer number of people and apparatus there. So our current baseline performance right now in the rural areas is 11 minutes and 19 seconds. And our goal going forward as we try and improve our response times is going to be 10 minutes and 45 seconds to get the first unit on scene. When we look at the effective response force for a medical call, it's typically going to be an ambulance and an engine or a truck. So to get 6 people to the scene, we're looking at 14 minutes and 30 seconds. And this is everything being equal that the folks at Station 7 are in quarters and available, or Station 8 are in quarters and available. Wherever our units are, you know, if we have calls pulling us east, that response time may increase. So those are kind of the benchmarks that we've looked at. There has been an analysis done when we add Station 9, beginning this year and most likely opening next year. I was unable to get that before this meeting, but we can definitely get that information out once I receive it.
Very good. Thank you.
Quick question on that one. Can you compare those response times to what it would be as you mentioned in an urban setting?
Sure. Let's go up to, so to get our total number of units on scene for a structure fire, we have this, it's the same effective response force for the getting every unit on scene of 13 minutes and 20 seconds. Where it changes slightly is getting that first unit on scene. So as opposed to the rural areas at 9 minutes and 20 seconds, in the urban area it's 7 minutes.
Okay.
So about a 2.5 minute difference.
Great, thank you.
And the medical responses, it is quite a bit more. So when we're looking at urban areas, it's 7 minutes and 3 seconds. And in rural, it was at 11 minutes and 19 seconds. And really the reason for that is we don't have a full-time staffed ambulance west of Sim Street. That's going to be our closest unit. At our Station 7, we kind of cross-staff an ambulance, but that's, again, if they're in quarters and available. And we do have our SAM 59 unit that's located up in Candelas. So that was not taken into consideration on these response times. So it's to get an ambulance there is what we're looking at.
Thank you.
Good deal. Thank you, Stephen. I do see a couple more questions, both really related to if there is a specific emergency evacuation plan for Leyden Rock, per se, if there's, you know, again, a wildfire or some other grass fire in the area. So is there a specific plan that is in place, either by the fire department or the city of Arvada? And then also, are there, one of those two questions is asking about specific reunification points, I guess, for multiple members of households, etc. So is there an actual evacuation route that is published?
Not that I'm aware of. I think this is something that the fire district, the police department, and the community can work on. I've got ideas and thoughts on what that could look like depending on where you live within the community. Your initial evacuation point is going to be this road, and then this road, and then this road, to try and disperse the number of people going to one location. But of course, depending on the situation and what's going on, people may have to move from one location to another. But that's something that really is going to have to involve, folks from the Leyden community. We can give suggestions and help out make decisions, but whatever's best for the community.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say probably there would be an interest in, having some sort of, I would say, specific document provided either by Arvada Fire or the city of Arvada that gives clear instruction, in the event of some type of situation like that, but on which roads are best accessed, or again, if there is a specific evacuation route that people should take. And that's certainly something that we could, communicate to residents. But yeah, I think that would actually be very helpful for some people to physically see on a map, just like you would have in your home. Okay, this is our emergency evacuation route. And so this is, if all things are okay for that route, then that's the route we know we're going to take. And then perhaps individual families can set their own reunification points, other places outside of the actual community. But I think that would be helpful. Is that something that, Tracy, that you might be able to help guide and direct us to, or is that something that you might be able to put together for residents? Basically points on a map that show them where, in what area of the community they live, which roads they should access in the event of an emergency?
That's actually something currently we're working on right now with the city of Arvada right now, where we're looking at those type of items, what would be the best. And a lot of it's really going to depend on where the emergency's at there. And the commander's here, and he can probably answer some questions for us on that also. But it really is going to be based on where the emergency is at there. We're going to, through Code Red or through the reverse 911, we're going to be able to tell the residents relocation sites there, maybe RV. It could be, the NAC. It could be various locations here that we could give for folks to go to. But again, it all depends on the emergency, and we'll give some type of direction there. And Michelle, can you maybe discuss on our Twitter account a lot of the information that we can pass on also?
Yeah, so anytime that there's a live event that's happening, so even with our larger structure fires, the way that we communicate with the most up-to-date information is going to be through our Twitter account. So that's a pretty common thing for most fire departments and for the city. And if you want that really quick up-to-date information, it's following us on Twitter and getting that info that way. But like Tracy said, if you have Code Red, then we do have the ability to send you targeted messages that will let you know specific groups that will be evacuated. So that's part of how we would mitigate that issue of the mass evacuation, is that certain people would get the Code Red alert to evacuate the more intense areas first, and then we would kind of revert back and do that in a tiered fashion, so that it's not just opening the faucet at once. And it'll also give you directions as to where that reunification area will be. So because it is coordinating with multiple agencies, we can't send you to RV if we don't have the ability to actually get into that building, or maybe there's like a huge football game that's happening at RV that day. So everybody's evacuating there, and then there's a bunch of people that are already in the parking lot, and there's not a lot of place for you to go. So it takes a little bit of time. That's the part that's hard about the system, is that there's a lot that's happening in the background. So we're actually responding to the fire, but we're also working with our police partners, working with our city partners, working with the school district as well, because those are usually good reunification sites, to figure out what the best plan of action is. So Melissa might be able to speak to that too. We just attended a training actually on a red alert. So this was some of the things that dispatchers kind of told us, that it's a little bit difficult to get all that information out immediately, and it might seem like forever when you're in the middle of that emergency. Part of it is because we're trying to do all that cross collaboration to make sure we're doing the correct thing by you guys. So.
And by the way, on Twitter, you can find them at Arvada Fire. So that is their handle there. So you can look them up and follow them on Twitter if you're not already.
And if I may, Michelle really hit on one very important piece of the whole evacuation discussion here, is that don't evacuate until you're told to. If things are packed up, ready to go, you can get out. But when we're trying to make these decisions on certain areas to evacuate, if we get the entire community trying to go out at one time, that's when things get really clogged up. So these decisions to evacuate the areas, like Michelle said, are geographic in nature, depending on whatever situation we're presented with. So that tiered fashion based on the immediacy of the hazard is important to follow those notifications.
Yeah, that makes good sense. Any other questions on evacuations or anything like that from those on the call?
Hi, Christina. I would assume that if we had an evacuation that was required of a section of the community, this would be done in coordination with Arvada PD, and we would have their assistance. And we've got Commander Nazar in the meeting here with us. Would you have a minute to just kind of touch base on what that might look like, Commander?
Sure, Brett. Listening to everybody, talk about this, there's obviously initial response. Our fire partners and the police department, if it's a large scale event, are going to establish a unified command. We're going to have a command member there. They're going to have a command member. We're going to get a scope and a sit rep or a situation report on what we have and what we don't have. That expedites decision making, and it allows us to look at a large scale event and then begin to kind of whittle it down to determine the resources we need, the routes that need to be established or closed off. I know that if we have a very, very large fire, I know that our state partners and county partners, if we need to close off sections of 93 well north and well south of the actual incident, that's just literally a radio call away to keep people out so people can get out of the actual target area. So it depends on the environment. It really does. But I think we've got a unique relationship with our fire department. We train frequently together, despite the old adage that police and fire hate each other. I think we probably have one of the best relationships, quite honestly, in the country. So we have a different mission, but we're all on the same side. So it all depends on the scale and how big or small the event is, depending on what kind of response we need. But we've dealt with these things in the past. Several years ago, there was a fire that engulfed Indiana from 64th Avenue North. And it was quickly dealt with by the fire department. And we called in all kinds of resources to help shut down roads to keep people out, so the people inside the target zone could get out without interference. So we have other resources on station or on standby. Tow companies, if cars are abandoned, we'll get those moved out of the way to keep portals, transportation portals open. So I think that given the geographic location of Leyden Rock, a lot of these, and we're talking about fire, I don't want to step on fire's toes, but these things don't just creep up on you and happen instantaneously. you usually see smoke. There's conversation that takes place. There's evaluations that take place. I know the fire people are checking the weather all the time when it comes, almost like pilots, when it comes to fire season. So they got a good handle on if something does happen, where they need to focus their energy on. And I know that because I've talked to a lot of the fire people. I don't know if that helps or hurts, Brett.
That helps a lot. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
So I do have one more question that came in previous to the meeting, and this one is for fire. And this question is from Frank Venezia. He's a resident, and he says he's curious because he sees a lot of the fire hydrants around the community that look to be pretty far above ground on their pipes, I guess. And he's wondering if it's okay that they're that high above ground, and if they're fully functional, if you see them positioned that way.
I can take that one. Being a little bit higher is a better case scenario than them being too low, which does occur. And I have been working with the utilities division at the city to correct some out in the Leyden community that are, just a couple inches above ground. So when you see those, go ahead and, contact the fire department, contact the city utilities, and we can get those fixed. But yes, there are standards of how high, whether it's how low or how high fire hydrants have to be. But the fortunate thing is the city is very responsive to getting them fixed if there is a problem. And also they inspect and maintain all the fire hydrants to the tune of, I want to say it's close to 6,000 fire hydrants in the city on a biannual basis. So they do half one year, half the next. So they do keep really good tabs on the fire hydrants and make sure they're installed and operating properly.
Very cool. I actually have one question myself, and that is related to, I guess, family planning with respect to fire inside the home. So how often would you all recommend like a family meeting to come up with an evacuation plan from the home? And what kind of information should the family members share amongst themselves during that sort of meeting?
I'll take this one. So it's important that everybody makes a home family escape plan. And what we really want people to do is evaluate that twice a year. So when we teach this to our kiddos in school, we say, practice that home escape plan 2 times. So it can be maybe once during your winter break and once during your summer break, or practice it 1 time at night, 1 time during the day. So that you can, because we know that in the case of an emergency, we get a little crazy sometimes, right? So if we practice it, then we're going to do better at it, just like with everything else. And so, and when you're practicing it, you're also evaluating that home escape plan, making sure that it still stays true. And you want to make sure that you have a meeting place, of course, like you said, and that's going to be somewhere that's in the front of the house. That's always going to be there, right? Like a mailbox or a lamppost. It can't even be a tree. That's a safe distance. It's best if it's not across the street, because we have fire apparatus that's coming in. There's going to be, police cars that are coming in potentially too. And so we don't want anybody in the middle of the road trying to get over to their meeting place. But it's really important for us to know that everybody made it out of the home safely, because it's going to change the way that we start to attack that fire. So if that fire is really raging and there's no need for us to go inside the home to fight the fire from inside, then we can just fight the fire from outside. So it can actually save firefighters' lives if we know that there's no residents in the home. If we know that there's people inside the home, that's going to change things up. So we're going to look for people if they're in the home. So we are here to preserve life and then property. So that's what our motto is. And we're going to go in that order. And if we know that everybody's out safely, then it makes it a lot easier for us to fight the fire in the best way that we can do it. So yeah, 2 times a year is the best go for that. And it's a good time to remember to check all those smoke alarms too, which we really suggest that you do that monthly. But those smoke alarms are really your key to success for getting out of that home quickly and safely. So thanks to Charlie and Suze on this call, who have installed a lot of smoke alarms in our community.
Michelle, can I add one thing?
Go ahead, Charlie, sorry.
It's Susie. I just wanted to add one thing with respect to evacuation and reunification. One of the things that we teach in CERD is that everybody should have a contact person within their family or a friend who's outside of their community, outside of where they might necessarily be. Then if somebody's at work, somebody's at school, somebody's at home, they can all call that one person and give a status update as to where they are, what they're doing, and that they're okay.
That's another really excellent point, actually. And I was going to say back to Michelle, like I like the idea as well of doing that emergency planning meeting with the family and doing the mock evacuation both during the day and the night. And so that gives people more confidence at both those times to really remember what they need to do. So yeah, very good points. And I think Commander Nazarick wanted he had one more comment, it looks like, on unification. So go ahead when you're ready, Commander.
I don't want to step on Michelle's toes here, but during large scale events, I didn't know if people realize this or not, but I mean, massive large scale events that could include the federal government, the cell towers are overwhelmed. And oftentimes when you try to make a cell phone call, you'll get the circuits are busy. And to be quite candid with you, if it's a large scale event, the federal government will take over the cell towers and your cell phones really won't work. However, most people don't realize that the text messaging system goes over a different network. So if the cell towers don't work, your text messages will almost always work because it goes through a completely different system. So like Michelle said, it's always good to have a family plan in the event that people get separated, to identify a rally point where everybody's going to meet, whether it's down the block or at the high school, in a parking lot, someplace. That's really taking the responsibility on yourself to make sure that you're taking care of your family and the people close to you.
Those are great points. Thank you, Commander. I appreciate that. And I think we've really heard quite a bit about and learned a lot tonight about, especially about preparedness. And of course, you know, some of these points of, you know, discussion about evacuation and, you know, how to respond both individually as a family and as well as community members. I am all through all the questions that came in prior to the meeting, but so I would like to open it one more time to anyone on the call, resident or not. I see, Stephen, you have your son, it looks like, joining the meeting as well.
Yep, curiosity was getting to him.
Hello there.
Hi.
Hi. So are there any other questions this evening for either Arvada Fire or, since he's on the meeting, Commander Nazarick?
I guess I would just ask, maybe by way of a summary, for the fire and police folks on this meeting, if we, the residents, were to take one piece of information away from this meeting, what's the most important piece? What do you want us to know? Obviously, the defensible space is huge, but reading between the lines, what I'm hearing is communication is the most important thing. So what's the one piece you want us to all walk away with here?
I guess I can start, Chris. Rally your neighbors. You talked about what, 1,500 households in Leyden Rock, and there's 10 of you. What's that?
Yep.
0.5% of the total residents are engaged. And I know people have lives. I mean, I get it. Life gets in the way. But it seems like, in my experience with this particular group, it's the same individuals, which is awesome. But if you can just get one person to join in, and everybody does that, and then everybody else does that, it's not going to be long before we're going to have so many people on here that you get little tiny boxes that you can barely see them. So keep up the work, and we'll, from the police side, we'll press from this end, and then if you press from that end, maybe we can make a difference. and I'll relinquish that to my colleagues in the fire department.
I appreciate that.
Well, I don't think it could be said any better than that. You know, just you indicated communication, and it's not only communication between, you know, the HOA, the community members, the city, the fire department. It's just within that community, spreading the word that you're getting tonight. And even if people aren't getting involved in this aspect of it, if you guys can spread the word and the communication, then, you know, it will work. It will work.
I actually already think we're making a little bit of headway, and the more we put the messaging out there and the more we offer these opportunities, I think the better we'll all be. So that is our plan, as Brett noted, and we're certainly really glad to partner with you guys. Just an outstanding set of professionals that we have on our side working in our community, and I just really, really very much thank you guys for taking this time, you know, just to be present and, you know, just show that level of participation with the folks that you serve. And it really is just very much greatly appreciated. I do want to just put one last call out for questions before we wrap up. You know, and certainly if there are other questions, we can provide Tracy's, Michelle's, Commander Nazarik's, Stephen Parker's information. I'm sure that they wouldn't mind having that information disseminated. So that certainly can be done after the meeting, but one last call for any further questions tonight. Well, very good. I guess I'm going to have Michelle go ahead and stop recording. And I just want to take one last